What do you think?
I think we're dead meat. Real dead meat.
Go ahead and laugh, you guys. If I ever find a little bastards that did this, they're dead meat.
Welcome back to What's Your Favorite Scary Movie, the show where I talk to people about their favorite scary movie. Today's guest is hard-hitting professional wrestler Malakai Black of AEW. Hey man, how's it going?
Well, we're the day after a massive pay-per-view, so I'm pretty beat up. But when it comes to like horror movies and just kind of this kind of stuff in general, I was like, no, we're doing it. I did ask him, he's like, hey, do you want to reschedule? We know you had a rough night. I was like, no, we're having this talk today because it's actually something I've been looking forward to. I'm here, I'm ready to do it, and let's talk some scary stuff.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're recording this the day after Revolution, where you had an awesome match. Literally watching it yesterday, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how long after these events these guys feel this in their body. But I mean, you're going multiple times a week, so do you ever have a point where you're feeling okay?
I mean, it was different when I was like 22 versus now where I'm almost 37. Like my body definitely heals differently. But when it comes to like this thing, especially when it's pay-per-view time, it's time to go, man. No holding back, and I'll deal with the injuries later. I actually did sustain a light injury, but very manageable. After this, actually, I have treatment. I've got dry needling and physiotherapy on my lower back, so we're just gonna like get the kinks out, and this Wednesday, getting right back on it at Dynamite. So,
well, it's awesome. You're doing great, man. I'm so happy to see you where you are, where, your creativity is allowed to shine. You've always been a wrestler who interests me and my wife, Chelsea, because obviously our career is horror movies and you have a very horror aesthetic. Is that something you've always been into, like horror movies or just, darkness in general?
Yeah, I mean, maybe darkness is kind of the edgy kids, word. It's more that I was always attracted, and just because of my childhood and how I grew up and what I had to deal with in a family setting. It's funny because actually as a child, I was quite frightened by horror movies, but that's, I guess in a way, that's also the allure of it. It's the over imagination and what a movie can do to your imagination and what it makes you feel. And fear is a very addictive thing because I think we like being scared. I think we like trying things out and see if we can, push that threshold continuously. And I think horror movies, in a perhaps much more simpler setting, they do exactly that. They allow us to like, well, am I going to get real scared by this movie? Like when you go into a horror movie, you sit down with this idea of like, oh boy, what's going to happen? It's almost like you're getting on this roller coaster. And I'm also a big fan of just like, effects, special effects, practical effects. And I, for different and the same reasons, apply practical effects in the things that I do.
I remember being a kid and my parents rented Scream and they're watching it in the living room, and that opening scene made me so scared that like I ran out of the room. And then, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And then after that, I was like, well, can I watch that now? Am I brave enough to watch it?
So that's funny that you bring that up, right? Because that number one tells me about the age difference between you and I.
Yeah, it's a few years, yeah.
And number two, that funny enough, I just spoke to David Arquette maybe a day ago because I hadn't watched the new Scream. So I watched it and I messaged him and I said, dude, these movies are always fun, man. They just never fail. Yeah. And I'm sitting there with my wife watching. I'm going, oh, this, and this, and I'm getting mad because like all these cliches. And then I realized that's the goddamn beauty of it. That is exactly what this movie wants you to do. They want you to get mad at the cliches. They want you to get mad, but then they also try to flip it on you. And then you get mad at that again because it's almost like you're making it too obvious. But then you start thinking, wait, this is too obvious. This is too simple. You know what I mean? And funny enough, usually I'm the one who unravels the plot in horror movies before the finish. There's this kind of a thing between me and my wife. And my wife will tell you that I'm always the one that says, oh, it's this, that, this, that, this person. And usually I'm right.
Yeah.
She was the person this time that said, you know what? I think so-and-so is related to so-and-so. And I'm like, you might be right on that one. And she was completely right. And it was like one of the best. It was just funny how even with my wife, who wasn't necessarily the biggest horror fan, but through me, like kind of learned how to appreciate horror movies in a different way because a lot of them are actually very intelligently written. And they do a lot more than just like, oh, here's a dude with a hacksaw and he's like chopping people's heads off. There's a lot of intricacies that I think horror fans pick it up, but not casual fans pick that up, I think.
Yeah, and I think, that's kind of a similarity between horror and professional wrestling, where non-fans or casual kind of mainstream audiences just assume that it's one thing and kind of simplify it down to its most base roots, whereas the fans can appreciate the more intricacies of it and know that, no, there is storytelling involved here. There's like passion and intelligence being done by everyone who's involved in creating these things, and they can really appreciate the nuance of that when it's there.
Yeah, the most recent example of that I can give you is just the whole way we brought in Buddy versus how we brought in Brody King. With Brody, I had to like feed it to people and make them believe that they were the ones who came up with the idea, and discover that it was Brody versus Buddy, who I could hide and let people speculate on. And, it's two different calibers of two different stars, one being, well known in the indie circuit and like Ring of Honor, and the other one coming from the exact same setting as me. And arguably our most famous trait was with one another. So, there's two different approaches, but both got the exact reaction that I wanted to, just of how we emotionally played it. And that's the beauty of it. Like, it gets much deeper than just the bell rings and two dudes are locking up and, hammering each other on the chest or the chin, or like throwing each other off the top rope into a ring that is not that forgiving as people think it is.
Yeah. And I gotta say, man, personally, I'm so excited to see Buddy join the House of Black, because we went to SummerSlam 2019 in Toronto and we did the meet and greet, and Buddy was actually the first wrestler that we got to meet and talk to, and he was just so kind, and I've always been impressed with both his physique and just in-ring talent. We wanted to meet you that day, but your line was way too long, man, and it's great to see you both shine together here in AEW.
Yeah, he deserves it, absolutely, and so does Brody. Two of these dudes, and when we coined the idea, me and Tony coined the idea of the House of Black, I just had a set idea of who I wanted, and they were first picks. I was like, no, it's these two, and I understand if you can't do it, because I can't look in your, in the business side of things, but this is how I see it. And he was like, no, that's how I see it too, and I understand your reasoning for it. So, we started fabricating. So, owe a lot to Tony.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, so as far as horror movies not always being what people think they are, I think, the general popular idea of horror movies is probably slashers, your Michael Myers, your Jason Voorhees, kids at a summer camp getting murdered. But obviously there are a whole bunch of different types of horror movies and horror hybrid movies, and the movie that you picked to talk about today is Aliens, which is not arguably, it's an action, horror, sci-fi. It's melding so many genres together.
A lot of things together, yeah.
It's one of the few sequels to a movie that I think there is a healthy debate over whether or not it's better. And I personally don't have a dog in the fight. I think both movies are amazing in their own ways. Alien being more of that like slow, suspenseful horror, and Aliens being more faster paced and more actiony, but it's definitely a horror movie to me. There are some scenes and sequences in Aliens that are just beautifully constructed scenes of suspense and terror.
I think the movie is revolutionary for a couple of reasons. And again, I also don't have a side to this, but the only explanation I can give is one of the few instances where I feel in the cinematic universe where the sequel enhances the story of the first. There's a good continuation, because truthfully with the third one I didn't feel that, but with the second one I felt it was such a good continuation, and it like organically evolved from that single alien to an entire planet and colony infested with them. It was the right amount, it was the right threat, it was the right actors. And also what I think is like Sigourney Weaver, man, this is the 80s and she was a badass, and like for the time it was revolutionary for a female to have the lead in a melting pot, but pretty much also an action movie, and just doing a phenomenal job. I don't think anyone watched that movie and felt that Sigourney Weaver was a character that wasn't believable. She was incredibly believable, and to pull that off in a world dated back in the 80s, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And that's also one of the reasons why it's one of my absolute favorite movies, because she just did such a phenomenal job as she made those movies come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. She is the through line for those first four films, and 3 and 4, especially 4 for me, have some issues, but these first two are pretty much perfect films for me, and a lot of it is because of her performance. And I love that the strength of her character of Ripley isn't just in her performance, especially in Aliens, it's also in the writing of how the other characters react to her, because the second lead good guy in it is Corporal Hicks, who ends up taking command after everyone else gets killed. And I just love how in love he is with Ripley's competence. There are so many scenes where you can just see him completely enamored with this woman because she is take charge, no bullshit, and he just follows her lead and goes with what she's saying because he recognizes her expertise and he never tries to one-up her or dismiss her like the bad guys in the movie. And it's a shame that 3 kills him off right away, but I love him as a character.
Yeah, no, I love him too. I especially love the scene where where he's teaching how to use the pulse rifle. And it's like, and that's where you slap the mag in, and you know what I mean? That's where you count. It was just a really good scene. It was a really good movie. I felt all the characters played such a phenomenal job. Velasquez is obviously also like one of my absolute favorite. Her death scene with now I can't remember his name.
Gorman, Lieutenant Gorman.
With Gorman. In that, where he pulls out that grenade and they both grab it and they look, and it's just, man, the whole movie is just, for me, it's a movie that I revisit very often. Again, my wife never really watched these kind of movies, and then she watched with me, and slowly but surely they have become some of her favorite movies too, because it was just such a great, impactful movie, and I just loved the whole thing as a whole, as an action movie. I just really embraced the whole concept of aliens, and it forced me to like collect alien figures, alien comics, and I love the fact that they started merging Predators into it. Even though the movies might not always been the greatest, I really enjoyed that first one, and I didn't really hate the second one. I wish they would have done more with it, but that's a personal preference. I just think every movie, including the fourth, has something. I actually really like the fourth.
Oh, you do like the fourth? Okay, it's divisive.
I do like the fourth. Yeah. Yes. And the thing is, like, I understand what people's problems is with it. But here's the thing, right? So being in a business as professional wrestling, so I'm in a business that has entertainment, and there's cameras involved, there's scripts involved. I understand how things can change, and I understand how hard people have to work, and not just like the people that are acting, but the people with sound effects, and the people with practical effects, and the people behind the camera, and the people directing it. Like, although with us, it's obviously different in a way that we don't have as a set this way. Like, our stage is our set. Our camera crew is our crew. Our lighting guys are our lighting guys. You know what I mean? It is the same, but it's not. But it's entertainment, different form of entertainment. And I understand how hard people are working on something. And therefore, I have found ways to enjoy certain movies with a threshold that I'm not as critical. So therefore, coming from the entertainment business, I have lowered my threshold and kind of go like, no, you know what? It's not as simple as what is going on. And I'm just going to enjoy what this is and enjoy it for what is being presented to me and the hard work that I'm seeing on screen. Doesn't mean that I always like everything, but even then I look at things through a different lens than I think a whole lot of people do.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's the same approach that I take to horror movies because I went to film school. I directed some short films that were all bad, and I know the immense amount of work that goes into even making something that ends up being bad. So when I see something and I don't personally like it, I never tell someone, oh, don't watch it, because one, they might like it, and two, regardless of how bad it is, there was effort put. Like, no movie is made without effort. And so I always try to look for, like, who's doing a good job? Was it the costume designer? Even if everything else is falling apart, are those costumes really good? Or are the stunts really good? And I try to highlight the positives of films, even while, speaking to the negatives. So you said you like the practical effects. It makes sense with Aliens because, they were done by Stan Winston, absolute legend of that, like Jurassic Park dinosaurs, so many other things. And I think the effects in Aliens are great because, as you said earlier, this movie really expands upon what was introduced in the first film. Like with Alien, you have a small crew, and here you have a giant squad of soldiers running around. In the first film, you have a singular alien drone, and now you have a whole bunch of them. And of course, the alien queen, who I didn't realize until I was rewatching this last night, like, she's not brought in until the last 20 minutes of this movie. This is like a 2-hour, 20-minute movie.
Yeah, she has a really slow reveal.
Yeah, such a slow reveal. You only get like 15 minutes of it, but she's so memorable, especially because it's a giant practical effect that it just stands out so much.
She gets one comment earlier on in the movie where they're like, who's laying these eggs?
But each one of these things comes from an egg, right? So who's laying these eggs?
And that was, when I first saw that movie, I remember going, wait, what? Isn't it the aliens? Because they said it in such a way that they were already hinting at the fact that there was something else going on. And I always thought that was very clever, you know, like, and I really, like, it taught me that, like, you can say something and then put something in people's minds, which is what we were just talking about. And that's actually from that line. That's also one of the reasons why I like that movie, is because it taught me a lot of, like, how to talk in a way that it influences people's way of thinking. You know, you introduce one thing and you make people think 100 things. And I always thought that was very fascinating. And there's a couple of movies where practical effects, even in this day, still hold up. And obviously The Thing being one of them as well.
That is my favorite horror movie, The Thing.
That is, yeah, that like the aliens and The Thing are very close, like, with me. It's such an iconic movie and it holds up. And it's a lot of with the practical effects of, like, Terminator 2, Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. There's so many of these, like, cool effects. You bring up Stan Winston. I still follow the Stan Winston School on Instagram, and every once in a while I'll go through, because they'll post some throwbacks or they'll post some stuff that they're working on. And I have a soft spot for werewolf movies. So sometimes when they post, like, the animatronics of certain types of werewolf movies that they've worked on, it's just so cool to watch.
What do you prefer, The Howling or An American Werewolf in London? You have a preference?
I'm a Howling guy.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. And not because I didn't dislike American Werewolf in London. I actually thought it's one of the greatest horror movies. I've always had a little bit of maybe resilience against werewolves that are on all fours.
Oh, okay.
And I like the werewolves that stand up on 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just like the humanoid type werewolf, wolfman, dogman type creatures because they freak me out. Like, imagine seeing something like that in the middle of a road, like a wolf standing on 2 feet.
Yeah, it's much more unnatural.
Yeah, where, you know, American Werewolf in London had basically this big grotesque wolf, and the transformation scene is obviously legendary. Let's not put that in any form of debate. That is probably still the best werewolf transformation I have ever seen. There's actually a good show back in the 2000s that was Stay Human. It was a British show. They made an American version of it as well. And there's a werewolf transformation that is really, really good. And it's done by an English actor. And what made it so good is he had these screeches that he did himself, these pain howls. And if you've never seen it, I implore you to watch it.
I'll definitely look it up, man. For Aliens, you know, there's the 2 different versions of the film. There's, like, the theatrical cut and the director's cut. Do you watch both? Do you have a preference between the 2 of them?
I think I have the director's cut.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what they add on in the director's cut.
I've seen the director's cut just one time. I've seen the theatrical cut a few, but I think what they add is stuff with Ripley's daughter, like in flashbacks or memories, and then more stuff with the colonists before they're all killed by the aliens. Like, you see the colonists before you get there.
Okay. I think, yeah, where you see the kids running around,
yeah,
and where you see them kind of like discovering the ship where they go in, and then the father getting like a face hugger on his face. Is that the one?
That's all
director's
bring him
cut
back
stuff. In? Okay, yeah, no, I definitely have. I think that's the one that I have. Yeah, that's actually funny because for me, that's actually the version that I'm used to.
Yeah, I think a lot of people
that's
have
funny,
that.
Like, you're saying that to me like it's the most obvious thing in the world, and I kind of go like, I don't even know if I watched the theatrical cut per se, and if I always just watched the director's cut.
Yeah, I have some movies like that. I think Apocalypse Now, I always watch the Redux version for whatever reason, where it adds like a half hour onto it. It's like, that's the version I know.
That's an intense movie too.
Yeah.
That's a very intense movie.
When I talk to people about their favorite horror movie, I like to see if they can stump me with trivia questions. So I understand you've got some questions for me about aliens. Now, I didn't study for this or anything, so we'll see how I do.
All right, so here's your first question.
Okay.
What film later reused the nest set after Aliens finished filming it?
Ooh, so the nest set when Ripley finds all the eggs, and it's like the big wide shot of just the horror on her face as she realizes what she stepped into the middle of. Oh man, that's a great question because I actually have no idea.
All right, so it was Batman. It was used for the Axis chemical set.
Oh, so the 1989 Tim Burton Batman?
The Tim Burton ones, yep.
Okay, yeah, they both have that kind of like dark gothic feel to them, so I like that.
You can place it, right? You can place it.
The sets in Aliens, when I was rewatching it yesterday, I just like really honed in on how amazing all those sets are and how like you just instantly buy that you're on another planet, that it's been infested by aliens. Like you're never questioning like, oh, they're on like a studio. No, it's just so believable. It's so good.
Yeah, they went through great lengths to give it a lot of like validity, and I think that's also like, again, the attention to detail in this movie is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
All right, I think this one you're going to get because this is quite a common one.
Okay.
The noises of what animal were used to create the shrieks that aliens make?
I remember I covered this movie back in 2017, so it's been a few years, but I remember watching this and being so perplexed by that noise that they were making that I had to look it up.
I did too.
Yeah, it's such an interesting high-pitched wail. And I believe that they used elephants, correct? Trumpeting elephants?
Baboons.
Baboons! Oh, I got that wrong? Oh, no!
It's okay.
So that howling shriek when they're getting all blown up, that has some baboon in it?
Yeah, apparently it's baboons. I always thought it was elephants too because it's the most recognizable sound, but apparently it's baboons. So
interesting. Okay.
You might have this one too.
I hope so. I don't want to go 0 for 3.
You're gonna do it, man.
Okay.
Which cast member's mother made a cameo in the film?
So I don't know this, so I'm just gonna have to take a guess. A mother, so it'll be an older woman, probably maybe in the boardroom when they're debriefing or interrogating Ripley. But I'm just gonna guess. Is it Sigourney Weaver's mom?
Correct. There we go.
Was that the scene where she's in?
I don't know. It didn't specify, but like as soon as you said board meeting, I remember that when they debriefed her, and it was a table full of like individuals, and I actually think that you're on the money with it. I think it is in the debriefing scene.
You know what? I hope it's the lady who Ripley berates and is like, I'm sorry, did IQs drop while I was comatose? I hope she's just yelling at her mom in that scene, because that would be so funny. I love that. I didn't know that, and I love that her mom is in it, because motherhood is such a theme throughout the film, whether it's Ripley to Newt to the doll. There's even a shot early on where Ripley's face like dissolves into the earth, like Mother Earth. And I just love that ongoing theme with that character, especially because, like we said, she's such a badass warrior, but this movie allows her to also be a caring, nurturing mom. It's wonderful. Yep. It's beautiful.
Yep. Especially like losing her own child and stuff. And
yeah.
All right, here we go. At which iconic recording studio was the score for Aliens recorded?
Recording studio. Was it, I'm just gonna guess, was it Abbey Road?
Correct.
Yes! Iconic recording studio. I'm like, hoping Abbey Road.
All right, last question.
Okay.
And I didn't know this one. I think it's actually very, very cool because it signifies how important this movie has been.
Mm-hmm.
Which renowned museum now exhibits one of the alien eggs in the film?
A museum with the alien egg. I feel like it's got to be a big one. So like Smithsonian? Yes!
Yep, that's the one.
Oh, yeah.
See, you did great. You only had 2 wrong. So you had, out of the 5, you had 3. So that's not bad, man. Yeah, I think that's such a cool concept, man. The Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. having one of those eggs. And like I said, something like that, if it's displayed there, that will tell you how important it was for American cinema, which I think is amazing. And not just American cinema, just like in cinema in general. It's so cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of the few movies that I think got both critical and cultural recognition, because I think Sigourney Weaver was nominated for an Oscar, which those rarely happen for genre films like this. Like an action horror film is rarely going to get Oscar nominations. And then on the cultural side, everyone knows what a xenomorph is. Like it's just iconic. Mm-hmm. And I think, the first movie established that, but I think it's because of this sequel that just really cemented its place among American pop culture as just being a recognizable, universally recognizable figure.
Yes, I think that because it also tuned back into a little bit more of an action movie, it was more accessible for a larger audience.
Definitely. And then the fact that James Cameron made it and had made and would continue to go on to make some of the biggest movies ever just further cements it as something worthy of preserving. Malakai, it was amazing talking to you, man. I loved chatting with you. Great conversationist, great thinker, great speaker. It was truly a wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah. And, I just have to point out, I can't help but gloat a little bit. You said you saw the new Scream. I'm actually in it. My wife and I are those podcasters who the guy is watching on his laptop. We're friends with
No
Radio
way.
Silence, who made the movie, the directors and the producer.
Now I'm gonna go watch it back, and now I'm gonna have to see it.
I have like a big beard and a hat, and I'm playing like a douchey version of myself. I'm like, why don't they just call it Stab 8? It was so
That is
fun to be able to
so
do that.
funny. I didn't know that. That is hilarious, and I'm gonna watch it back. That is hilarious. Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
huge.
you, man. Yeah.
Really huge. That's an honor, man. That's so cool.
Been the highlight of our career covering horror movies, to be invited to be part of Scream, which is one of my favorite franchises. It was like a dream come true.
Yeah. That's well. Congratulations, dude. That is awesome. What an accomplishment. Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Immortalized in like a franchise. That's crazy good.
I'm Scream canon. That's nuts.
Absolutely, man. Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks again for the conversation. I'll be in Vegas for Double or Nothing. I got second row seats, so hoping to see you there. Hoping you're kicking ass there. You and Buddy and Brody. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You too.